Welcome everyone, Christine here with the discussion about Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, and in this video I want to talk about Isabella and Vlad von Karstein in the game. The true heirs of the Empire, the true unifiers of the Empire of Sigmar. They are quite ridiculous as legendary lords. I think the vampire counts, when we consider the meta of Warhammer 3, the vampire counts are probably one of the best races to handle the meta situation of the game. The reason behind that is they can raise high quality troops on the field on the fly whenever they need to. So one of the problems that happens in virtually every campaign, with the exception of like the Warriors of Chaos, and even then there are limitations there, is that you cannot recruit high tier troops on the field. You have to get them to the front line, and it takes time. So you're always considering, well, maybe I should just recruit a low tier army, which you can certainly still do if you're playing the vampire counts, but you have a significantly higher amount of flexibility in a campaign as the vampire counts with the units. The unit roster is certainly limited in the sense that it's all melee units and cavalry, but the sheer amount of power that you do have because of the ability to recruit units on the fly and relatively cheaply as well, through the raised end mechanic, gives you, let's say, an incredible amount of power is not even touching it. Like over here, this is turn 25, and I want to highlight something over here about my diplomatic situation. I've got Katrin as a vassal, I've got Ungram as a vassal, I've got Kemmler as a vassal, I've confederated the Red Duke, I'm working on getting Thorgrim as a vassal, though he's probably not going to be willing to do so just as easily, because he doesn't like what I've been doing with Karl Franz. Hell, I would have made Karl Franz a vassal. I might even make Gelt a vassal in this particular campaign, given the way things are looking right now. So there's an enormous amount of power. This campaign combines some of the best abilities of a campaign. You have vassalization ability for diplomacy. You have the ability of recruiting a significant number of units very quickly in a campaign, to the point that you will likely outpace your economy in the early game, but it doesn't matter. You have a ridiculous number of heroes in this campaign as well, because you get the Mausoleum of the Mad Count, and so you can recruit 7 vampires when you're considering everything in a campaign from very, very early on. And as the vampire counts, you can recruit a significant amount of necromancers as well during the course of this campaign. So you end up with a lot of heroes, a lot of diplomatic possibilities, a lot of power in general that you have access to. And since Isabella and Vlad start together, you start with 2 legendary lords basically close together. Sure, the other one, the one you haven't picked, will start as a legendary hero, but the crucial thing is their special skill line, their lord effects, their items are all viable. Are still there. One of the reasons that you want to actually go with Isabella as opposed to Vlad, Isabella gives you more vampire capacity plus 3. She gets that building, same as Vlad, and she gets weapon strength. Also, if you're playing Isabella as a legendary lord as opposed to Vlad, you start with Vlad's items on him as a legendary hero. So there's a biblical level of power. Like, Isabella and Vlad can solo armies, and I'm not talking cheap armies here either. Like, I've gone on a rampage against Vlad, now I'm going against Strika. Sterling is under my control. Altdorf has fallen. I mean, I'm going to confront Grom. Like, one of the reasons I pushed so far west is, like, I started the war with Grom, and hoping that Kemmler would do better with it. He didn't. So there's enormous possibilities with this. You'll gain a lot of money for diplomacy. You'll gain a lot of money for the economy of the vampire counts. The power that you do have access to over here is just, quite frankly, absurd, on a level that you simply will not see in other campaigns, nowhere near as easily. And because you've got so many heroes and so many good units, you end up in situations where you're fighting multi-front wars effectively simply because you have the ability of getting these units. Like, so you end up in situations like, well, maybe, I overreach, maybe all that. Okay, okay, you may overreach, just recruit some higher tier units. That's beyond the regiment's renown. Furthermore, in a Vampire Counts campaign, because you had that Blood Kiss benefits, one of the benefit is, like, Von Karstein Lords, Lamian Lords, Necrarchs, Strigoi, Blood Dragons. There's a lot of power in this particular campaign. I mean, there's a lot of power in every Vampire Counts campaign, but between the vision that you have in this campaign, the abilities you have in this campaign, the Lord skill lines you have in this campaign, very few things are actually going to be able to stop you when you're playing this particular campaign. Very, very few things. Not that many. I mean, the one thing that's going to be, believe it or not, whatever reason Vlad is showing up over here as a legendary lord, that's a bit of a bug, might be a mod. I'm not sure. I really don't know. I think that's actually a bug, by the way, nothing else. But you end up with absurdity after absurdity in terms of just the sheer level of power. By the way, yeah, that's a bug because I don't even have recruit the defeat the legendary lords enabled over here. But you get crazy levels of power here. You get unique lords that start out immortal, so with that have the immortal skill from the very beginning, so you can't lose them. It is an unstoppable horde from a diplomatic, economic, military perspective. Every single aspect of the game that's actually good you can find in this particular campaign. You have a lot of foes to potentially deal with. You have a dynamic campaign that can go multiple ways. My advice, though it's not necessarily the only path, my advice is to actually go over here for Grand Peak, get barracks over here, sell it to Ungram, you might just get a vassal agreement with him. Might fight Zufbar along the way. It may go your way, it may not go your way, depends on how it plays out. That's the thing, like, this campaign can go in many ways. Like, this is, in a lot of ways, from the diplomacy, military perspective, and economic perspective, in a lot of ways, this is what an Empire campaign should be. A lot of decisions to be made and a lot of possibilities to be had during the course of a campaign. And yet it isn't. So yeah, Vlad and Isabella are the true heirs of the Empire, true conquerors of the Empire. And honestly, if you didn't have to kill... if you didn't have to take Altdorf as a victory condition, I would say, like, the best thing you could do is make Karl Franz your puppet, your vassal, because that would work brilliantly well. Like, you've got the diplomatic power of the Warriors of Chaos, a recruitment system that puts them to shame, because your units, you can recruit high tier units, including tier 4 units, very high level units. So you're going to get an enormous amount of flexibility in your armies very quickly. Like, you get things like Black Knights with Lance and Barding. And you look at some of the other units that may be available in this particular campaign. You'll see what kind of units you can recruit, like Hex Wraiths, Karen Wraiths, Graveguard, very early. Like, this is still the early games, what you will. You end up with armies looking like this, or even more ridiculous, because they can be more ridiculous. You look at the unit recruitment that's available in some of these campaigns, like, yeah, it is absurd. It is very strong. It works quite well. There's very few complaints about this campaign. Just the one thing. Because you are playing a melee-focused faction, you don't have the flexibility in sieges to break down walls. There are some ways of dealing with that. Like, you could go to someone like you could go to Karakadrin and get some outpost units to get some artillery to open the walls. That's, by the way, why you should why you should vassalize Ungrim. Or you could potentially go to Kislev in the long term in order to get access to some of their units, range units, and crucially artillery units, once they do have them. So there's a huge level of power in this campaign that you just don't see in any other Vampire Counts campaign, and very rarely see in general. Like, this is an S tier campaign by far. Costain signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more. Special thanks to Protossx, Kebie, Fingo, JK, Vacre, Alain, Alex, and Daniel, and to all of you who make it possible.